Well, hello. Look at all those bright, shiny faces. Anybody else not want to be inside this weekend? Yeah, it was so beautiful. And what I found was that I had work to do on the computer, but I was avoiding it by doing chores outside. Now I will tell you that I have avoided chores outside by doing paperwork inside in the past. But this time, we used to joke when I worked in tech, we had to do our annual performance review twice a year. And we used to joke saying that that's when your closets got cleaned, right? Because nobody actually wanted to sit down and do the work. But what I found myself doing, and thanks to Reverend Tanya for calling me so I got a break, was stacking 2 cords of wood. Wow. That's a lot of wood, Matt. It's a lot of wood. I had done a little bit like Wednesday morning. And then I did a little bit more Thursday morning, but I didn't get much done. I barely broke into this pile that had been dumped into my carport. And so yesterday I thought, all right, now's the time. After I went to the dog park, thank you, Janet, for introducing me to that. We have so much fun at the dog park, and Finn loves it.
He's great.
He absolutely loves it. He goes zipping around the park, and then when he decides he needs a break, he goes whipping around, and then he jumps up on the bench where all the people are sitting and just sits there as all the other dogs go piling into each other. It's like a cartoon. It's really quite funny. But he's just like, okay, break time. And then he'll take off running again. He just loves to run. And I thought, all right, if this dog could run and run and run and run, I can stack and stack and stack and stack.
There's an age difference.
There's an age difference. Yeah, one's a puppy. I'm not. As I was stacking, I realized that in my early 30s, my mother had ordered a half a cord of wood delivered to her house so she could burn in her fireplace. My mom loved a fireplace. She loved a fire pit. This was one of her most sacred things, was sitting at a fire. She just loved it. She would sit in the silence and watch her fire. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to be a good daughter and I'm going to go help my mom. And I got over there and I started stacking that wood. And let me tell you, it was exhausting. I was throwing it in the wheelbarrow and moving it around to the side of the house and making the stack for her. And I kept taking breaks and breaks. I was tired. I was exhausted. I thought, how am I supposed to do this? It took me hours to stack this half a cord of wood. I don't even know if it was a half a cord. Maybe it was a quarter cord. I don't know. I was exhausted, but yesterday, as I am throwing logs and flipping things over my head and avoiding the dog because he wants to play with all the wood too, right? I'm throwing the logs and I'm thinking, I wonder how long have I been at this? And I'm just having a good time, right? Watching the dog, throwing sticks for him, watching the golfers go by. I look down, it's been 2 hours. And I'm not feeling tired. I'm feeling energized, in fact. And I'm thinking, how's my lower back going to feel tomorrow? Right? How are my shoulders and my arm and honestly my triceps, because I was flipping this way. I was like, you know what, I could keep doing this all day long, but I need to move some extra muscle. So I grab it and I flip and I do some overhead and some side. Like, you know what? All these things I've been doing at the gym all these years, I'm doing right now, right? All these things I've been doing at the gym. And I thought, I have the strength to sustain this today. Who would have thought that all these years later, 25 years later, I can do this and it's not a problem, right? In my mind, I was getting, oh gosh, when I get old, I'm never going to be able to move. I'm not old, people, just so you know. But back when I was 30, I thought this was old, right? And I have a more vibrant body, which is lovely. But I realized as I was chucking wood and lifting wood and dropping wood and arguing with the stack that would fall down and go, I was playing the perfect game of Jenga when all of a sudden everything fell, right? And I realized that I wasn't thinking about anything other than the wood. other than the pile. Now, normally I have a jukebox going on in my head. It's filled with a lot of songs by Karen Drucker and Melissa Felipe and Z Egloff. It's filled with songs by Jamie Lula and Gary Lynn Floyd. It's filled with songs by Michael Franti and Led Zeppelin, right? It's a lot of Eagles going on in there. And they're always playing. A lot of Jimmy Buffett too. But I didn't even have that going yesterday. I was in the moment. I was in the moment and totally one with this pile of wood that looked like it was endless. Right? And I realized I'm relaxed. I'm relaxed in moving my body. I'm flowing. I'm in a flow. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how the world can feel like a sea of constant changing tides and how we can navigate that. It might not be moving wood for you. It might be something else. So let's explore a couple of these things. We're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about creating a pause, about watching and listening in silence, and flow. Flow.
Next one's a newer one to me. There's a band.
Creating a pause. There's a difference between sailing blindly and sailing consciously.
Social media,
Yeah.
yeah.
Grew
Like
up sailing out of the Santa Cruz
like
Yacht Club, Santa Cruz Harbor. And as little kids, before we had bikes, we had a Jester dinghy, my brother and I, and we were allowed to sail from End Dock, where Dad's sailboat was, right directly across the harbor to where Aldo's fishing shack was. Now it's a restaurant. We could go from one point to the other point, and that was it. And we had a row just in case. We were probably 7 and 8, right? And we would have to holler over, Mom, Dad, we're done with our nap. Can we come over? And they'd holler back, sure. So we'd get the little Jester and get ourselves across. We had to work at going in the direction of where we wanted to go. Otherwise, where would we end up? Depended whether the tide was coming in or the tide was going out, right? It really depended. So we had to work at it. We got really good at it. We learned that if we pushed off really hard, we could get halfway across the harbor, right? And then just hope and pray that we'd get to the other end. But we had determination. We knew where we were going. It's the same thing in life. I talked about this last week about, there's people that wander around just following life wherever it takes them. And then there are those that say, that's the direction I want to go. I like what that person's doing. I want some of that. Oh, let me explore this, right? I was that person for a while, just going wherever life took me. Anyone else? Yeah.
Still do it.
You still do it. And what I found was that I didn't have what I wanted in life. If I was just flowing where life took me, where it was super easy, I didn't have what I wanted. So I had to work at it. I had to work a little bit. I had to focus myself a little bit. When we watch and we listen in silence, it's like taking our hands off the control, pausing, and pausing. Now, pausing is an opportunity to clearly see the wants and fears that are driving us, right? So I had to pause from life. I had to look at it. I had to decide what it was that I wanted. So creating pause. I love this acronym this acronym for pause. Postpone action until serenity enters. Postpone action until serenity enters. I love this. What happens when you are riled up? When you are riled up and you are intense and you're lots on your mind, or I've been hearing from a few people that they're frustrated about what's going on in our country right now, right? So what happens when we share that with somebody else? They say, oh yeah, and then did you see this? And oh, did you hear that? And it starts to raise this frenetic energy, right? Right? Mark and I do this with each other. We've been on the phone a lot the last couple of days. Did you see, what about, having those conversations? And what we realized was, wait, hold on. Now I actually said to him, I'm getting riled up. And he goes, me too. Let's change the subject. I said, right. So we paused. We took a moment. We paused. Now, pause is just a temporary stopping or slowing down in order to rest, reflect, and regroup. That's all pause is. It's a moment of slowing down or stopping or slowing down in order to rest, reflect, and regroup. When we were younger and we were told that if we got angry to count to 10, yeah, that's what that was for. That was for. I didn't get it at first. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? No, take a breath. 1, 2, right? And breathe into that moment. Breathe into that moment. There's a new awakening that is happening, and a silent cry to awaken to our own true nature and being, to our humanity. To our humanity. Did you know that when we pause, and there was an article in Psychology Today that was beautiful, and this person was talking about exactly what I read earlier, to taking our hands off the controls and pausing is an opportunity to clearly see the wants and fears that are driving us. See, pausing allows for reflection. Pausing allows for emotional regulation. Pausing allows for clearer thinking. Who here wants some clearer thinking, right? Pausing is an important part of what we do and what we teach in Science of Mind. See, Ernest Holmes was teaching us to pause and listen to that still small voice within that George is going to talk more about, right? Yeah, that's what you're talking about. And that's why our spiritual practices that we do, the meditation before service, that allows us to more easily live as our spiritual essence, physically aligning our body, mind, and spirit. Now, I've talked about here before, my favorite place to meditate as a teenager was at this kitchen sink at the cabin in Albion. I loved doing the dishes. I loved it because it allowed me a moment of quiet, because everybody else had left the house and they were all outside playing, and I had the beautiful view straight down to the ocean. And I would volunteer. To do the dishes. Everybody else was like, Eileen's doing dishes, we're out of here. So I think we want to go play. I loved it. And the deal is that I would do the cups, the plates, the silverware, the bowl, and Mom would wash whatever Grandpa had cooked with, because Grandpa did all the cooking. She would do that stuff. I would do all the tableware. It gave me the moment to pause. Mom and I rarely talked when we did this. We just did. In fact, now that I think about it, I think my mom was deflecting people from me. I think she was behind me, handling whoever came in the door, because something in her knew that I needed that time to refresh my soul, to allow the quiet, because I don't know if you ever get the opportunity to be around a bunch of Puritan women, we don't shut up, right? We have some great storytellers in my family, and I love to listen because it's so much fun. It's so much fun. But there's always something, a memory that comes up for somebody, or my uncles too, because they basically grew up with us, right? And it's a fun time, but when I can have that moment of quiet, it was really powerful. And it's these practices that we learn that we can carefully, that's when we get to observe the noises that invade our minds. I watched a video yesterday morning before I started stacking wood. And it was a video of, it was somebody doing decluttering for a client, a professional declutterer. And she scanned the room with her camera. And as she scanned the room, she played it as the sound, a whole bunch of people all talking at once and traffic going by and all of this. It was chaos sounding as she showed the space. And then when she panned back, she had cleaned the space and it was silent. It was silent. Right? There's something about the noise, whether it be visual or in our head or what's going on around us, that forces us to take a pause, to slow down, watch, and listen in silence. See, when we observe what comes to our mind without judgment or criticism, but rather in a state of stillness and silence, it's easier to get out of the box we've created in our mind and throughout our lives. This is when we can disidentify with whatever false category we've put ourselves in. Oh, anybody else been in the, oh my gosh, I have too much going on, I'm super busy, I don't have time for you box? Yeah, that, oh, people would ask me how my week was going when I worked in tech, and that's what I would do. And they'd go, I get it. I get it. It was all encompassing. It wasn't fun. My husband says to me the other day, when are you coming home? And I said, Monday. He says, thought you were coming home Sunday. I said, no, I need time to clean the house. Right? And he says, I knew you were going to extend it another day. Because I don't want to go to the chaos. I want to see my husband and my cats and my birds and my family, but I don't want to go to the chaos. I've been here almost a month. I gotta go home, right? I gotta go to the other home for a little bit.
It grows on you.
It grows on you, right? Eckhart Tolle says, when you stop believing everything you think, you step out of the thinking and see clearly that the thinker is not who you are. The thinker is not who you are. Again, stay tuned. George is going to talk more about this next week. Now, here's a trap that we often can fall into. I fall into it less here. And this is again from Eckhart Tolle from his book, Stillness Speaks. He says, when you're bored, you can satisfy the mental hunger by reading a magazine, talking on the phone, surfing the internet, right? Anyone? When you're bored, pick up the phone? Yeah. Transferring to the body the mental feeling of lack and the need to always want something more and satisfying those needs briefly. Or you can feel bored and restless and observe the feeling of being bored and restless. Oh. He says, as you become aware of these sensations, some space and stillness will begin to emerge around them. At first, there will only be a little, but as the sense of inner space grows, the boredom will begin to diminish in intensity and significance. So even boredom can teach you who you are and who you are not. One of the things I love about being here is that even in those boring moments, I can just sit and look out the window. I could just sit and watch the golfers go by. It's really fun when they choose a choice word and scream it out loud, thinking that there's nobody around them, and I just giggle quietly, right? Researcher, I'm going to see if I can say this right. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, say that 4 times fast, coined the term flow. And Mihai says, this is a feeling of timelessness. Being in the flow. This is what I would teach engineers when I would teach them about a mindfulness practice. We were talking about being in the flow. And I would say to them, how many of you have written code and been writing code and totally being focused on it, and then looked up and realized, oh my gosh, I missed lunch or dinner, and every hand would go up. Because you're in the flow. Even Jim's hand went up. Yep, I've done that. Andy's done that, right? You're in the flow. You're doing your thing. You're just like, right? It's a feeling of timelessness. See, when we pause and observe our thoughts, it's stepping out of our ego, a shift happens. A shift happens. Our energy flows and empties out from our emotions and thoughts, which creates an opening for divine wisdom to live and express its state of oneness as our bodies. That's what they were doing when they were in the flow. They were in a state of oneness. They're creating. They're putting code into a computer, they're creating, they're allowing that force, that energy to move through them. And then they test it. That didn't work. Let's try something else, right? They're totally in the flow. That's what I was doing yesterday, stacking wood. When I realized I was on my 4th stack, I thought, who did that? See, because I went out and asked the wood to stack itself. It didn't pay attention. Right, but I thought I'd ask, right? Hey, wood, like, thank you for showing up in my driveway. Would you please stack yourself? I got a busy week. It didn't do it. It didn't do it. But I fell into a flow, a rhythm. I was having fun. It started to I call it a heavy mist. My husband calls it rain. I call it a heavy mist. You know, it wasn't raining, but but I can hear the drops. And I thought, all right, how does my body feel? I'm starting to get sore. I'm starting to get tired. I'll go in. And the next thing I know, I'm bending over and picking up another piece of log and I'm tossing it over. I'm like, Eileen, stop. Who called themselves an Energizer Bunny to me recently? I think it was Janet. Yeah, Janet called herself an Energizer Bunny, and that's what I thought of. Like, oh God, here I am being the Energizer Bunny. Somebody take my batteries out, please. Right? Wait, you can't. I still have things to do. I still have paperwork to do. I have an annual membership meeting to get ready for, right? But it's when we're in that space, in that flow, that's when intuition speaks to us. That's when that still small voice speaks to us. And that's when we can learn how to pay attention to it. It was intuition. I know that was a big win, wasn't it? It moved things. It was intuition that told me to go check on John. It wasn't on my list of things to do that week. It's my intuition that said, go check on him. Right? And then immediately when I went in the door was take care of Winter. Take care of John's most prized thing on this planet. I'm not going to say possession because I think Winter owned John. Right? It was that intuition that said, no, you're handling this. This is your job. This is your job. Go do it. Right? It's my intuition that tells me, maybe I should avoid that highway. This happens a lot when I go back to the Bay Area. Maybe I should avoid that highway, even though my internet's telling me to go that way. Right? It's my intuition that says, pick up the phone and call your sister-in-law to find that she's struggling. Right? Or to call my friend Velma and say, hey, how are you doing? To hear that she is having a grand time in Tennessee, right? Just my intuition. I was just thinking about you. How many times have you thought about somebody and your phone rings? Right? It happens to all of us. It happens to all of us. So when we naturally flow with life's changes, we're living from our unity consciousness. Our unity consciousness. So here's your homework. This week, you have the opportunity to remember to live from your unity consciousness. So knowing that within that ever-changing back and forth of life, you are always in that divine womb of sorts. There's nothing outside of you. You are not separate from life. You are life itself. So Remember, when you need to, just simply take a moment to pause what you're doing. Notice your thoughts and remember who you are. A perfect expression of the divine. Yeah? Can you do that this next week? You're all looking at me with blank faces. Do you get
Good idea.
Can you do that? Can you just notice? I've had it with tourists driving 35 and at 55. Take a deep breath. People not knowing where they're going and just turning in front of you or walking in front of you, just take a breath. Or trying to fix that one thing that isn't cooperating. Trying to get that screw in that right hole and it's not drilled properly. What are you going to do, right? Take a breath, pause. Allow yourself to be in the moment and then try again. Don't give up on life. It's here for you to live it. Let's pray. So knowing that there is only one source, one power, one presence that moves in, through, and around each and every one of us. It moves in, through, and around everything we can see, touch, taste, feel. It is in the joy of the voices outside of this room. It is the wind. It's the sun and the moon, the sky, the ocean, the waves, every single granule of sand on the beach. It is in the flickering flames of the fire that warms our homes and our hearts. It's in that feeling of love and generosity. It is that feeling of love and generosity. See, it is all there is. It is light, it is love, it is power, it is grace, it is beauty. It is abundance. And we get to be a part of that. We get to be a part of that. And by slowing down and going with the flow, we can recognize that we are a part of that, that there is no place where it stops and we start. It is all one. It is all one. So I'm knowing and declaring in this moment that healing is happening right now, that abundance is showing up right now, that joy is fulfilling every heart and soul. I'm knowing that as we each move forward in this next week, we do so with a sense of community, with a sense of serenity, with a sense of love, and with a sense of joy. I know that as we each pause for a moment and allow ourselves to listen to that still small voice within, we can actually do that and hear the messages that are divinely gifted to us. I know that as we move through the next week, we move and we allow ourselves to be in the flow of life, in the flow of life. And when we feel a little disconnected to that flow, we just take a few deep breaths, grounding ourselves into Mother Earth, connecting the top of our heads up to Father Sky. And remembering that we are all connected. Remembering that we are all connected. That there's no spot where healing can't happen. That there is no spot where joy is not present. There is no spot where abundance isn't showing up. Because that's all God. And so I'm grateful for this knowledge, this teaching, the teaching of Ernest Holmes, and the ancient texts with which he studied, the philosophy that we follow, this thing called the science of mind. I'm grateful for all of it. And I ground this prayer knowing that it's already done, that Spirit was already saying yes, yes, and yes. And so I anchor this prayer and I ask you to please join me in saying, and so it is.